Hi, everybody. This is Liz Garden. I am the current principal, at least for a couple more weeks here before summer starts, of the Henry P. Clough Elementary School in Massachusetts. And I'm also lucky enough to be a co-fellow for the Center for Innovative Leadership. And we are here today for the NAESP Principal Podcast. And I am joined by my amazing co-fellow, Scott. If you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, hi everybody. Scott McLeod, Professor of Educational Leadership at the University of Colorado, Denver. Absolutely delighted to be a co-fellow with Liz for the Center for Innovative Leadership. We have with us today Bryan Byerlee. Bryan, why don't you introduce yourselves to the listeners? Tell them a little bit about who you are, where you lead, and a little bit about your background. Let's start there.
Sure. Well, hi everyone. I'm Bryan Byerlee. I'm the proud principal of Garden City Elementary School, which is in Cranston, Rhode Island. I've been an elementary school principal now for 14 years, 7 of those at Garden City School in Cranston. And prior to that, I was a fourth grade teacher, also in Rhode Island, and a special educator as well. So, elementary teacher at heart, and now leading the group.
That's awesome. I was actually, I have to do a little shout out because I was at our NASP zone meeting recently, and I said to all of the zone one peeps, those are all my peeps over here on the East Coast. I said, listen, we're interviewing a lot of principals across the country. What about right here near us? Excuse me, Sherry Sacco emailed me and said, "You've got to interview Bryan." So I'm so excited that she recommended you because, so Bryan, I understand you've been able to help create a brand new school. That is so exciting.
Yeah,
Um,
it's been a very exciting year.
yeah, so tell us a little bit about kind of, excuse me, designing and opening a new school. What was your involvement in the design of the learning spaces, and what was the whole process like?
It's been incredible, and it's a pretty long story. So Cranston really had a vision. It starts with a vision, and Cranston's vision was to build new school facilities, but not starting with the focus on the building itself. The vision really had to be there, and our vision was changing the way we do education in Cranston. So our state a while back called for, in recognizing the need of our aging school facilities, called for school buildings that were, warm, safe, and dry was kind of the catchphrase for a while there, and which is absolutely true. School buildings should be warm, safe, and dry. But to me, that's really a minimum. And in Cranston, we looked towards what can we do with education, because when you build a building and just focus on, the walls, you haven't touched the way you actually do the work of teaching and learning. So we wanted to get away from isolated classrooms with one teacher in them all day long that really offer limited flexibility, are more restrictive, to what you can do because of what the old cells and bells model of the industrial era school buildings offer. So that was the vision of the district. And we are fortunate that we had a lot of community support and that they supported a school construction bond. So going from there, our district built one wing at a school known as Eden Park, not too far from me, and that was a Pathfinder project where they built one learning community wing. And from there, we launched into a larger scale project, which is Garden City. And our entire school is based on a learning community model, in that we have 5 learning communities that are mixed grade. Our kindergarten actually does stand alone, but then we have first and second grades working together, third through fifth grades working together. So the vision really came from there, and we put the building together. Again, not just about the building itself, but what would happen in the building. So leading up to that, the first steps were really doing some shared visioning work. We brought students in, we brought teachers in, talked about what would your ideal learning environment look like. We did a lot of drawing and sharing out, and then received great designs back from our architects, from Fielding International, our designers. From that point, we gave feedback. One really important part of that process was giving teachers time to really explore and talk together. We also had a lot of support from Fielding with their educational consultants. So we spent time on just kind of playing with space on a map. I'll always remember a faculty meeting we had where teachers were using little people and little pieces of furniture and just talking together. How would we use space like this? How does this change the way we do our day-to-day work? So a lot of time was spent on that exploration. From there, we moved on to designing and selecting furniture pieces, which students again were a part of, testing things out, giving feedback. I created some shared docs they could drop that feedback onto, and we really kind of did some selection work together. And then professional development was a huge part of it. So teachers received over the course of a couple of years, professional development on project-based learning, on use of space, and then just community of practice type things where my teachers and students were able to talk to the teachers and students at Eden Park who had gone through the transformation on a smaller scale, and we were able to learn from them about the trials and tribulations of shifting your work into a learning community model that we were then able to apply to a larger scale space.
So, Bryan, I wonder, I love the process that you described. I wonder if you could do a couple things for us. One is maybe share with us a little bit about what did your students and teachers tell you that they wanted, as you moved various little images around and talked about possibilities. Like, what did you hear from your people, including your students? And then second, how did that get translated to conversations with architects and designers, right? I think most principals never have a chance to work with an architect or a design firm. And so maybe a little bit about that would be helpful too.
Absolutely. So it's a little bit frightening, or can be frightening, to ask students, hey, what would you want to see in your school? And I always say, you expect kind of some far out there answers, I want the ball pit at the entrance, I want McDonald's in the cafeteria, those kinds of things. But it really wasn't. They were looking for comfort. They wanted to be comfortable. Imagine that. They wanted to be comfortable during their school day. They wanted to be able to move. Movement came up a lot. They wanted to be able to see out the windows. If you can imagine, that was an actual student ask, to be able to have natural light and see out the windows. The old building that we had a lot of those sort of opaque windows that you really couldn't get much of a view from. So light, space, flexibility. They wanted to be able to use furniture and spaces for different things and not just, for one particular thing. And that leads to your next question about the conversations that are then had. One really neat experience our students had was the ability to design a piece of furniture they'd like to see in our space. That led to some really good conversations about design and function of furniture. And they submitted their designs to a furniture company in British Columbia called Natural Pod, who then worked with us to hear the students' work, hear their projects, hear their ideas, and Natural Pod then actually designed furniture right from the students' designs that they gave back to us, and students built it. So the connection that students ended up getting between the conversations we were having at the building level and then translate that to conversations with experts in the field, whether they be our architects, the furniture designers, and then see an actual hard product. That's pretty powerful. Students had the opportunity to speak to our builders during the process. The builders would share slideshows with them. Demio was our construction company, did an outstanding job sharing slideshows back to students about what was happening, building a foundation. What does that mean? What does water management look like? All those things. And then students would be able to put sticky notes on a Jamboard and ask questions back to the contractors, who'd then get back to them. So that level of two-way conversation and input that students had, I think, was very powerful and gave them a sense of ownership. So when they got to the building, it wasn't just something that had been built for them to come to, but something they were part of building themselves.
I literally have chills right now. That is amazing. Sorry, I know, Scott, you're going to ask a question, but I just had to chime in there and be like, that was just like, to hear that idea of like not being a place that is built for them, but they are helping to build. I mean, talk about the student agency, the relevancy, the like authenticity, powerful. That's amazing.
Bryan, so you've talked a little bit about the kind of learning and interaction that you hope to facilitate as you designed this building. You've now had 1 year under your belt, is that right?
Yes, one full year in the new building.
Okay, cool. And Liz and I are big proponents of deeper learning with lots of student agency and activity and applied work and connectedness and interesting tech usage and all the things. You took a very student-centered approach in this. What has learning looked like this year compared to past years?
Yeah, so it's there was a gradual build towards being in this building. I wanted our staff and our students to feel like we couldn't do what we wanted to do anymore in the building we were in, and that was the goal. I think that sometimes we put construction first and then put professionals and students perhaps in a new setting or with new furniture without any real work behind it, and that can lead to frustration and less than desirable outcomes. But putting the work up front really helped us to make sure we hit the ground running when we got here. So for a number of years, teachers have been implementing blended and personalized learning strategies. So we've done a lot with station rotations to really support very intensive and intentional small group instruction. Teachers have used playlists to give students choice and voice over what they do, which also includes the outcomes. So what kinds of things are students going to produce? So those things had been happening for a number of years and had been supported through ongoing professional development. So they were really just able to take off to a new level once we got into a community-based environment. So the very nature of a learning community allows for a lot of choice. Teachers don't own a classroom here. They share space in a learning community. We have learning commons and we have learning studios as well as small group rooms. So teachers had to come together to figure out and design their day, what space would be used when with what intention. When they're in that space, students have a great deal of agency in that they can move to where they're comfortable. When I pass through a learning community, I'll see students sitting at a more traditional type table that's a dry erase surface doing math right there on the table, but also sitting on the floor, sitting on a window ledge, sitting in cozy spaces like a little cube that has a cushion inside of it. And that's another piece that came out of student conversations. They wanted cozy spaces that they can kind of get into. We have those just sitting around, in different spaces within the learning community. So that choice, that I can be flexible, that I can go and work with my group of peers in a small group room. And it doesn't have to be out in the hallway, which I saw plenty of in my years of working in older buildings, or in a stairwell. They actually have a place to go to. So that agency, that choice, that ability to use an entire space to accomplish your goals has been very powerful for our students to feel like they own the space and to have that sense of agency. We're also working on transitioning to become a project-based learning school. So this year we spent a lot of time with our, again, educational consultants at Fielding and really refining our understanding of project-based learning. We've done a book study this year with a book called The Project-Based Learning Handbook from PBL Works, which is out of the Buck Institute. And teachers have had a lot of common planning time and common work time on designing PBL units. I will tell you that one of the best things we did this year, there were a lot of good things, but one thing was the first project of the school year was a school-wide project where we asked every student to participate in designing a project to demonstrate how we'd use this new space safely and effectively. How could we do that? So they contacted the students at Eden Park to serve as experts and find out what they had learned, what they had done, and then they really made it their own to communicate how we would use this space. How would traffic flow? What are the expectations and norms around space use? So all those pieces, the various spaces, the continued implementation of blended and personalized learning that we had gotten pretty adept at with small group instruction playlists, pair that with project-based learning. It all came together.
Awesome. So, okay, so you're finishing up your first year in this new school. I like how you talked about though that like really a lot of this was leading up, you can't just kind of like come into this new space, some of that foundational work that you've been doing with the teachers over several years. Like that's important for people to hear that. But you finished your first year and like tell us what's something that you're most excited about from this year. But also, what are some of the challenges? We know, opening up a new school is certainly not easy. What's something maybe that you've learned from this experience, and what are some of the big, maybe big rock goals that you have for next year?
Yeah, I'm excited about a lot of things. We've accomplished a lot this year. One thing that stands out to me is the level of collaboration that I've seen just rise to a whole new level this year. Teachers want to collaborate and they can thrive in a collaborative environment. We all bring our own strengths, and when you can rely on your colleagues to enhance each other's strengths, it's just really, really powerful. So I mentioned that teachers don't own a classroom, which means no more teacher desk up in the corner of the room. In each learning community, we call it a TCW. It's a teacher collaborative workspace. And that's professionals only, no students in there. That's where they each have a desk, they have storage. There are some accommodations for comfort in there, like a small kitchenette, a conference table. And so they've really come to enjoy that. That was kind of a scary thing for them at first, to give up that desk in their room and to come into this almost dorm style, of living. But my teachers right now are saying they love that and they wouldn't go back, because they've unleashed the true power of collaboration. And it's not just, we're going to get together next month and do a project. We align our field trips, those kinds of things. It's daily collaboration. I have teachers teaching ELA, phonics lessons, math lessons, you name it, in large groups of 2 sections of classes, 3 sections of classes, together in a learning commons, and then breaking off based on student need and working together flexibly to meet students' needs. So that level of collaboration that people want to do, and now they have the space to do, has been really exciting for me to watch. Also, the opportunities for true inclusion with students that may have in an older building been in more of a self-contained type classroom, are in this learning community. And rather than integrating as a guest for math class, I'm in this learning community all day long, and I'll do whatever parts I can do based on what I need. So those are a couple highlights from the year. Challenges, of course, there are always challenges. New construction brings its own challenges as far as finishing projects on time, and those punch lists, seem to go on for a while. So that was one thing. Logistics was big. So newer and fewer is the mindset here in Cranston. After Garden City, now next we're working on Gladstone Elementary School. So we're working on school consolidation, newer and fewer. That means our schools are a bit bigger. So Garden City was a neighborhood school with, 250 or so students, and now we're double that. We're at 514. So managing a school with that many students takes a lot of planning, a lot of logistical thought into traffic flow, lunches, arrival, dismissal. It's just a little bit bigger of what you do on a daily basis. So that was challenging, and we'll continue to refine those things. And then school culture is a bit challenging when you're merging schools. So we know that small schools have their own personalities. They all are very unique. So to bring 2 together is a challenge, but all year we've really spent a lot of time working together at faculty meetings, at professional learning community meetings, and trying to get to know each other, and focus on the common goal of educating all our students in this new space. And we're getting there. It just takes time to cultivate those new connections between faculty, students who were on opposite sides of a boulevard, and now here we're together in this new space. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about school construction and design, and I think the biggest thing I've learned is that there's so much more to it than blueprints and hardware. That's almost the last thing. It's all the professional development and the focus on teaching and learning and what those goals are that then go into informing the design of the building. So I definitely learned a lot about that. And moving forward, we're going to keep working hard on developing our project-based learning understanding and being able to plan and implement project-based learning experiences that connect our kids to real problems in their real world that makes learning relevant, and be able to have platforms to share their solutions to problems. And then to continue building, obviously, a strong connected culture in this shared space that ultimately will increase student achievement. That's the goal of every school. And we're doing a lot of things I think will do that for our students.
Bryan, this is all amazing, and we're having a lot of fun just listening to what you've been making happen there. You've talked about a lot of stuff. You've talked about everything from sort of taking seriously the input of students, and staff into the design of a building. You've talked about what that means for learning transformations and the connection between learning and physical space. You've talked a lot about student agency and empowerment, and also helping teachers shift in some new directions themselves. I mean, there's just a lot to unpack here in the last 20 minutes or so. It's been really great. We're going to give you the opportunity, like we've given every one of our guests, to just, is there anything else that you want to share with elementary principals across the country? This is your big chance.
Yeah, I would just, from my experience here with this building, I would just say that the learning space matters. Talk about cells and bells. There it is. The learning space matters, and use the space you have intentionally. I think that the infrastructure of our schools needs a lot of attention. We have a lot of facilities issues to address, and it's sometimes hard to allocate limited resources to those things. But think about what we can do in the space we have. Break down those walls, maybe not literally, but figuratively if possible, and do what we have to do to provide a setting where students and teachers can use space flexibly, can have some choice, and can work collaboratively. How can we work around the old spaces we have to get those effective practices in place? Really give that some thought. And then just thank you for all that you do. I have met so many principal colleagues. Being part of NAESP, I'm the past president of the Rhode Association of School Principals, so been very involved with the organization. It's a tremendous calling being a school principal. I appreciate all of my colleagues, and I would just say keep at it. Believe in your teachers, your students, work collaboratively with them, and yeah, keep at it.
Bryan, thanks so much for being with us today. It's been really wonderful to hear your story and that of your community. I think one of the things that I'm really appreciative of here as we wrap up is that, unfortunately, we have a lot of school redesigns where the building allows for lots of possibilities, but teaching staff and administrators can't seem to wrap their head around what those opportunities are. And so we see a lot of more traditional teaching happen in newer spaces. So it sounds like you've found ways to get beyond that and really lean into some transformative learning, which has been really great to hear. So thank you.
You have to put education at the forefront. That should be the goal of redesigning any building, and the professional development and collaborative professional time has to come first, or you won't see anything different except for the new walls.
Oh, wow. So thank you so much. If you're tuning into the NAESP Principal Podcast, this was just an amazing addition here we've been talking to Bryan Byerlee, who is the principal of the brand new Garden City School in Cranston, Rhode Island. I too want to just comment and say, I think what's sticking with me the most is the fact that when you said in the beginning, Bryan, about asking kids, like being afraid to ask kids, because, I mean, as an fellow elementary principal, I'm like, you never know what they're going to tell you. But I think it's like out of the mouths of babes, right? Like that's who we're going to learn from, to create truly the learning community that they want and deserve. And so kudos to you for doing that. And I think it's important to note, I know in the beginning you introduced yourself saying that you've been a principal for 14 years. I have, I'm at that number a little bit more, so I can relate. But I think it's important that as veteran administrators, sometimes I talk to colleagues who, we've been doing this a long time, and we run up against that, it's hard to change. It's hard to do something different, but you didn't let that happen. And, you are, changing the face of education. And so I appreciate everything that you are doing there in your community and in your district. And I'm so glad that we could share this with all of our listeners, because I know I want to come. And now a lot of times we talk to people who are in other states that are much farther away from me, but that's a very quick drive for me to get to Cranston, Rhode Island. So
Come on down.
Yeah, I cannot wait to come and see this amazing, amazing space. So thank you so much for being here with us today. And thank you everybody for tuning in and listening. That is it today for the NAESP Principal Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.